Welcome to the VoiceOver Marketing Podcast, episode 23.
Well, it's that time again.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the VoiceOver Marketing Podcast. My name is John Melly, and this is the podcast dedicated to teaching in-depth and advanced marketing strategies for people in the voiceover and audio production professions. My goal is to help you make more money by showing you ways to leverage your time, charge more for your talents, and allow you to spend more time doing the things you want to do in your life. Hey there, it's John. How are you? Welcome to this episode. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Boy, what a month this has been. And I got to tell you, I'm really excited today because I'm about to go on vacation. Yeah. And no, I'm not bringing any recording equipment with me other than maybe my iPhone. Maybe I'll do a special podcast episode from the road. We'll see. See how much time I have for that. But no, I'm not bringing any of my recording equipment or auditioning equipment or anything like that with me on the road. This is time away. I know there's a lot of discussion back and forth of whether or not you should do that. I've decided that's what I'm going to do. But I want to thank everyone for listening to the podcast. This is amazing to me. As of this recording, there have been 13,202 downloads of all the episodes of the VoiceOver Marketing Podcast. And there have been just over 1,000 in the month of July, this month alone. Thank you very much for listening and all of your support and all of your great comments. I'm really excited today because our guest is Rob Siglimpaglia. And we've had a number of people in the VoiceOver Marketing Podcast group on Facebook specifically reach out to me and ask if we could cover the legal aspects of running a voiceover business. And so we've got our very own voice talent, actor, attorney, Rob Siglimpaglia. And we're going to talk about some really interesting issues many of you have run into. I know I've run into them over the course of my running my business. And so there's some great advice. And we talk about Rob's book, VoiceOver Legal, that he's written. He's actually, during the interview, you're going to hear that he's started work on a second book, a companion or a follow-up to the first book, where he expands on a lot of the topics that he discusses in the first book. But at the end of the interview, I was able to make an arrangement to get a discount for you on the book. So during the interview, Rob's going to give you the URL to order the book. So at the end of the interview, I'll give you a promo code, and it's an affiliate promo code where you can save $5 off the cost of the book. So listen for that at the end of the interview. Before we dive into the content, I mentioned the VoiceOver Marketing Podcast group on Facebook really was the genesis of getting this interview started. And I just want to give a quick shout out to all the folks who've recently joined, and thank you for joining. First off, to Marty Daniels, John Kavanaugh, Larry Gibson, Sam John, Carrie Crandall, Claudia Andrea, I think Claudia is in Italy, Ted McAleer, Alicia Hurley. Alicia, I think you were at the webinar I did a couple of weeks ago. Thank you again for attending. Pearl Hewitt, Mark Silverman, Romy Nordlinger, Doreen Pettigras-Janis, Dennis Stewart, Tammy Ryan, Shauna Leedy, Larson Bennett, Todd Williams, Jack DeGolia, Nancy Lynn Walters, Paul Woodson, Angela Stevenson, Tony Lynn Cousineau, and Tony Jimenez. Thank you very, very much for joining. I really appreciate it, and thanks for all of your comments and your feedback. Our guest today is a direct result of your requests to have the legal aspects of the voiceover business discussed, and I know you're going to enjoy this interview. So let's dive in. We'll take a quick segue right here, and then we'll begin our conversation with Rob Siglimpaglia. Well, welcome back. As I mentioned in the first part of the program, my guest today is Rob Siglimpaglia, and he sent over his bio just before we did the recording session, and my gosh, Rob, you've got so many credits to your name, but you may know Rob as the dad on the 2012 Chevy Super Bowl commercial, Happy Grad, where I think you gave them a refrigerator, and they got all torqued up about the Chevy, right?
Exactly. Well, they thought they were getting the Chevy, but
yeah, but
we were giving them the refrigerator with red bow on it.
Yeah. It's a great ad. But most recently, he shot a romantic comedy called Get Happy in a supporting role called Robert Robbins. And he was asked to play the lead in a new feature film where the part was written specifically for him. And the film's called One. And that'll begin shooting in the fall of 2014. That's this fall. And he's also helped many students, both beginning and experienced, get started in the voiceover industry and advance in the business through teaching and production of their demos. He's had the honor of writing a chapter in the 4th edition of the book, The Art of Voice Acting, written by James Alberger, which is considered by many to be the Bible of the voiceover industry. And he's also, and this is one of the reasons we have him on the show today, is he's the author of the book Voice Over Legal. Because, Rob, you have a similar background. I went to UMass Amherst, you went to UConn, and you graduated in '88 with a degree in political science. I graduated a year later with the same degree, but then you went on to graduate from Pace University Law School in '91. And get this, he passed the Connecticut, New York, and Pennsylvania bar exams on his first attempt, and he was admitted to the Connecticut bar in 1991. He hosted a local radio program back in the mid-'90s called The Law Show, and more recently hosted a radio show called Ask the Lawyer. But you have hundreds of voiceover, if not thousands of voiceover credits to your name, along with all the acting, the film, the television. So I'm really excited to have you on the show today, Rob. Thank you for your time.
And I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
One of the questions we get a lot on the Facebook group, the Voiceover Marketing Podcast Facebook group, is about legal aspects of the voiceover business.
Yep.
What do you see are the major mistakes that new voiceover talent make when setting up a voiceover business, and how can they avoid that?
Well, any voiceover artist that I see, well, not any, but a lot of them, and like I said, it goes for any of the arts, they kind of concentrate on their craft, which is great, but they don't realize that they're getting into a business. So they need to concentrate on setting up the business properly as well as practicing their craft at the same time.
Right.
They have to do both simultaneously. So, people just, they'll if they get hired to do a gig, whatever, they're operating by default as a sole proprietor. And that may be okay, but it may not be okay. So those are the things that they need to think about ahead of time before they start going out there and making money at whatever their craft is, voiceover in particular.
Is that when the bell rings, Rob, when somebody hands you a check for the first time or gives you their credit card?
Well, the bell should ring actually when you're starting your training and doing your demo, because those expenses may not be tax deductible.
Oh.
Because if it's a hobby, if the IRS thinks that you're engaging in that as a hobby, they're not going to let you write off any of that stuff. Or if it's a new profession, if you're training for a new profession while you're in a profession, that is generally not allowed either. So there's ways to get around that because, if you set up an LLC or a corporation, you can write off startup costs. And of course, there definitely is startup costs as far as demo production and training and stuff like that. So,
sure.
But those are the things that need to be explored before people, start to, class or two is no big deal. But once you really decide that this is something that you want to pursue as a career, you need to sit down and go over all those business decisions, tax decisions at that time.
And who should they go over that with, Rob?
They should go over that with an accountant for the tax and an attorney to go over the legal aspects. Preferably an attorney that has some entertainment experience, because setting up like a company to do non-entertainment things is a lot different than setting up a company doing entertainment-related areas, because it's just you're selling your services, and there's things that are deductible for voiceover that would probably not be deductible for other types of businesses. So it's it's important to know what you can deduct and can deduct. So
making the caveat that obviously we're not offering legal advice in this podcast, but just things you may want to consider. With that in mind, what are some of the things that are deductible or make an entertainment type business different than, let's say, a mom and pop retail store.
Sure, and I can give you a concrete example.
Okay.
Because these are questions I get every day, and I just shake my head, scratch my head, because I don't understand how people give advice on professionals to these, to voiceover artists. Like, there was a voiceover artist who had written me and said that her accountant said that she couldn't deduct the mileage for her driving in to do auditions.
Okay.
And I was like, that's absolutely incorrect. This is where it's different. You cannot deduct commuting costs for a regular job.
Right.
So if you're commuting into, Boston or New York, from a suburb, and it's a normal job, you can't deduct those costs. So that accountant who gave that advice was saying that by her driving into the city to do auditions, he was calling them commuting costs. And I said it's absolutely wrong.
Okay.
You're absolutely allowed to deduct mileage for driving into an audition and parking. I mean, absolutely.
And what makes that different?
Because you're seeking work. You're not necessarily employed. Well, you're not employed. You're going into an audition.
Mm-hmm.
So all the mileage looking for work and all the expenses looking for work, marketing, that's all deductible for voiceover artists and actors. Where it's not for, if you have a regular job, like I said, it wouldn't be deductible. So
right.
This is where you need to make sure the people that you're talking to have at least some experience in the entertainment field, because that's one of the things that I've come across. I mean, other thing like wardrobe, which voiceover artists don't necessarily have to deal with, but, actors, if you have to buy specific clothing for a role,
mm-hmm.
and you can't wear that clothing out on the street because you'd look like an idiot, then you're allowed to deduct that, So that's another thing that voiceover artists come across. Trade publications, like buying Backstage, you can deduct those things. Where if you're buying a Backstage, but you're not in the industry, just to read it at your desk, dreaming about becoming a voiceover artist, you can't deduct that. But those are the things that really makes a big difference at the end of the year, tax savings wise.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not an accountant, but I come across these things on the legal side all the time.
Right.
And it's the same thing like when you're setting up an LLC. You want to make sure that your LLC is equipped to handle all those deductions and that accounting for the voiceover field.
So LLC, that stands for Legal Liability Corporation?
Limited liability.
Limited liability company.
Limited liability company.
Okay.
No corporation. Because a corporation's separate, so.
Okay. Yeah.
LLC usually stands for company, but it could be in some states it is a limited liability corporation too. So
again, it depends on where you live and how the laws are set up.
Exactly, but they're the same thing.
What are the benefits of an LLC?
The big benefit of an LLC is that you can be a single member and be an LLC. So, like a corporation, you would need at least two people. You would need at least two officers, a president and a secretary in most states.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a vice president and treasurer that you can have in a corporation. And then usually if there's only two people in a corporation, there'll be dual roles that you're assigned to the two people. Whereas an LLC, you don't need to have all those. You don't need to have officers. You can just have a single member own the LLC and register the LLC. So that's the main advantage. It's easier.
Why would you do an LLC as opposed to a sole proprietorship?
Well, the reason you'll do an LLC or a corporation is to shield liability. Yeah, that's the other big consideration that people need to think about when they're getting into a voiceover business or an acting business or a side business.
Mm-hmm.
If they have a job and they have a house, and they have assets, you're starting a new venture, you want to try to protect those other assets if things go wrong with your new venture.
Right.
So that's the reason to set up an LLC or a corporation, so that if you operate your new venture through that LLC or corporation, your personal assets are not at risk. They can't sue you personally. They have to sue the LLC or the corporation. Plus, you can buy products through that, or sign contracts through that. So
open up accounts
through that. Exactly. All the legal tax and all the legal issues go through the LLC and the corporation versus your name. And that's when you're doing a sole proprietorship, everything's going through you personally. So, and it's actually a little more difficult also to account for personal expenses versus business expenses come the end of the year. If you run everything through your LLC and your LLC's accounts, much easier. to figure out your taxes at the end of the year.
Yeah, it's like, you use your car for this, and you go to get groceries, and then you, on the way back from the audition and all that rigmarole,
Exactly.
That's where the line gets fuzzy. Cell phones or whatever, or your checking or your savings account and all that kind of stuff. All that's got to be, it's tough to separate if it's all going into your personal accounts.
Exactly.
I'm sure there's some people listening saying, well, what could go wrong? It's just a microphone and I'm emailing MP3s or sending out CDs. What's the worst that could happen?
There's a lot of things that could happen. Just practically, what if you get sick? What if you get hired to do a job and you need to be in the studio or you need to record at your house the next day and you can't do it because you have laryngitis and they need to hire somebody else? They can absolutely hold you responsible for that if they feel like it, because you just cost them time and money
right
on their deadline. So that's a very simple example of what can go wrong. A more complicated example of what can go wrong is, like, say you're doing a celebrity impersonation.
Yeah, I've heard about this.
There's likeness laws, like you're not allowed to sound like somebody because everyone has a right to their likeness and their sound.
I heard Rodney Dangerfield made like the second career after that on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, if you're doing it as a parody,
yeah,
it's clearly a joke. That's fine. But if you're really doing it, you see all these things every day.
Yeah.
You want a James Earl Jones sound. You want Morgan Freeman. We want those sounds. And if they want someone to sound just like them in a serious commercial, James Earl Jones and Morgan Freeman may take issue with that.
Well, yeah, you're depriving them of the opportunity for that earning, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Then they may not care about it.
Right.
They might. So, that's a more complicated example. You don't want a big celebrity coming after you for doing a $500 voiceover job. It just doesn't make any sense.
And you're talking about commercials versus parodies, right? The parody is fine.
Well, parody in a commercial is fine too.
Oh, it is.
Like if you know that that's not really the person, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's a joke. It's a joke in a commercial.
Yeah.
That's fine. Parody has been protected as a fair use under by the Supreme Court of the United States.
Okay.
Because there was a case that went up that talked about that. So that's how Saturday Night Live gets away with their parodies, because it's a joke.
Yeah, it's like editorials or political cartoons or something like that, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. But if the person's if they really want a James Earl Jones or a Morgan Freeman sound, some of those names that you hear every day.
Yeah.
And they really want you to sound like that person, and they're trying to put out a serious commercial where someone thinks that's Morgan Freeman talking to them or James Earl Jones talking to them. That's where you run into a problem. You have the right to publicity.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a right to protect your picture, your sound. You're the only one that has the right to make money from that, and no one else does. So.
Right, and that's why you'll see, I think even, I don't play the lottery, but we do commercials for them, and I think even on the tickets they say if you win the prize, you're granting them the rights to use your image and likeness.
Exactly.
For promotional purposes.
Exactly, and when I'm sure every single voiceover artist knows what I'm talking about. When a script goes through legal,
mm-hmm.
those are one of the things that they're checking for.
Right.
So there's all those laws that and then like advertising, false advertising.
Mm.
The voiceover artist under new FTC regulations, if they're guaranteeing that a product's going to work, they're also could be on the hook too. The FTC can fine them.
Oh my gosh!
So that's why when the script goes through legal, that's what they're checking for, to make sure that all of the laws are being complied with the script. So it protects everybody. It protects the voiceover artist, it protects the production company, and the client who's ever doing the advertising.
We have listeners with all levels of experience. We have folks who are, like you said, thinking about getting started in voiceover, starting their voiceover career. And we have people who've been at it for a while. Can you give us like a checklist of things that people might want to be thinking about at the start, but even if you've been at it a while, things that you may want to think about?
On the legal side and the business side, it kind of overlaps with what you're trying to accomplish as a voiceover artist, right? Because as a voiceover artist, we want to get clients and we want to make lots of money and we want to be the voice of something. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So in order to do that, we need to kind of figure out who we're going to contact in order to get us there, right?
Right.
So basically you're learning how the business works by just being a voiceover artist and marketing. So underlying that are all the legal issues too, and tax issues that come along with that. So when you're concentrating on marketing, I'm trying to get all these great clients and make all this money, you also need to figure out, well, how am I going to account for this, and how am I going to pay my taxes on this, and how am I going to protect myself from getting sued? How am I going to protect my asset, my personal asset, so I don't get myself in trouble? So all those things, they kind of go hand in hand. So you want to try to figure out the best way in your circumstances to accomplish all those things. And then you'll have a much better chance of actually being a successful voiceover artist or actor versus somebody that just does it, off the seat of their pants and goes here, goes there, has no plan at all.
Right.
So the part of the plan should be part of your plan about how you're going to accomplish whatever goal you want. Say as a voiceover artist, you want to be the voice of a product, or you want to be the voice of a documentary. You got to come up with a plan as to how you're going to get there. Part of your plan should include legal and tax and business, how you're going to set it up. That should be part of your plan.
You want to lay the foundation at the beginning so that if something comes up, like you said, seat of your pants, you don't want to be in scramble mode.
Right. If a voiceover artist is saying, I want to be the voice of X product, or I want to be the voice of X documentary, that doesn't mean anything. Because, how are you going to get there? You have to go backwards and figure out, who am I going to contact? How am I going to work my way to get to the right people so I can become the voice of X product or the voice of X documentary?
I think I get what you're saying. Yeah. So part of the goal achievement is taking the right steps to achieve the goal. And what you're saying is do the legal and the tax stuff as part of that goal-setting process.
Right, because you're learning about the entire business.
Right.
So it makes it easier. Instead of you just have that pie-in-the-sky goal with nothing around it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even know who produces X documentary or who produces X commercial, right? But when you start stepping back and learning about the business and learning about the legal ends of the business, you start to learn these companies. You start to learn the issues that they go through, and then it becomes more routine.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not as daunting of a task. Right, and then you need advisors. So, you need a lawyer and you need an accountant that you can talk to, and an agent. You need a full team that you can talk to whenever you need them, because your goals are going to change. Your goal may not change, but the way you get to the goal, and your taxes will change as you make more money. Your structure, you may want to change to an S corp at some point if you start making more money. Those things might change along the path. So that's why you need your advisors there, so that whenever you need them, they're there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I mentioned this in a previous episode. It's like if we could do everything ourselves, then we wouldn't need anybody. But we have an economy, and everybody has expertise. So it's good to seek out professionals. I have an accountant and a lawyer for my business, and they were able to do things for me that helped me reduce my tax liability. So that's huge.
Plus, and here's like a little fringe and a little side. You don't know who your accountant and your attorney know. If they're in the business, assumably they know people, so they can point you sometimes in the right direction on how to advance your career too.
Oh, sure, yeah,
that happens a lot.
That makes a lot of sense. You've written the book VoiceOver Legal, so talk to us a little bit about the book.
Sure. Yeah, the book, it's called VoiceOver Legal, published by VoiceOver Extra. You can get it at voiceoverlegal.com.
Mm-hmm.
It talks about all these issues, all of these issues that we just talked about, plus more. How to set up your business, the correct structure, LLC versus corporation. What's the differences between them. I talk about collections. I talk about there's a sample contract in there, because every single job, I don't care how big or small, should have something in writing. Doesn't necessarily need to be a full contract that I have in that book, but it should be something, at least in emails, so you can get your money.
Right.
So it talks about that. Talks about agencies, how to get an agent. I have actually a couple of my agents in there that wrote sections in the book that talks about, how to get an agent, what an agent does, the difference between an agency and a manager. The union, there's union issues in there, how to get to the union, what the union does and doesn't do, and it covers pretty much everything I could think of about the voiceover industry. And And it also has questions and answers. So the way the book came about was I get lots of questions, as you can imagine,
Sure.
on a daily basis. So I just collected some of the most common questions, and I compiled them. And then that's how I started the book, by questioning the most common questions with answers, and took it from there. All of those questions and answers, the common ones I get are in the book, and the answers.
That's great. And how long's the book been out, Rob? A couple of years?
I think it's been out about a year and a half, I think.
Yeah, okay.
I think it was out like May of 2012 or something like that. Oh, actually, it's 2 years. You're right. Yeah.
Well, congratulations.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And I'm working on the second edition now. So
Oh, awesome. Can you give us a sneak peek on that?
Well, I'm just expanding on a lot of the chapters that I've done, and there's some more questions that I want to include in there. I'm trying to think. I was going to talk about. I was going to expand the pay-to-plays, so I'm working on sections on expansions of pay-to-plays. Some of the scams that I've been hearing about.
Like what? What have you been hearing about?
Well, I guess scam is a tough word, but like some of these websites that pay $25 for a 30-second commercial, and the problems that causes.
Oh.
To a voiceover artist.
Oh, okay.
If somebody's doing a $25 commercial job,
yeah,
they need to. I mean, I don't want to make this an economic discussion, because I know people, they need the money, whatever.
Right.
Or they're trying to get experience. But you need to think about what that's going to do to your future goal. So most people that are getting into the business, they want to do something bigger. They want to do, like I said, to be the voice of a product, or do a documentary, or do audiobooks, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
If you're doing a $25 job for something, let's just say you did a $25 job for a soft drink, a commercial, and there's no restrictions put on it, so they can use that spot for forever because there was no restrictions put on it. You're preventing yourself from being the voice of a lot of soft drinks in the future. You're conflicting yourself out for $25.
Oh,
so
wow.
That's another thing I talk about in the book, and that's something I wanted to expand on, because I'm seeing a lot of that now.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a lot more of that now, and I've gotten emails. Oh man, they're still using my car commercials. And if you get Chevy, and when I did the Chevy commercial, that was one of the things that was right in the contract. You guarantee you are not doing any more. You haven't done any car commercials in the last 2 years. That was like right in the contract.
Wow.
So, if they found out that I did, then I would have lost, all the SAG residuals and all that stuff. So,
wow.
You have to think about that's another thing. That I'm talking about in the new. I touch on it a little bit in my book, but I want to expand on it more, because it's becoming more of an issue now. Because there's just so many of these sites popping up all over the place.
Yeah.
That there's so much more. There's such a flood of voiceovers out there that people, they need to think about those things.
No one single job stands alone. They all impact each other.
Right, and that's the way that you build your career.
Right.
Right, because you become known as the voice of something, and then you're going to get hired to do that something again. You got to make sure you're allowed to do that something when you get hired, when you get the call.
Well, yeah, I frequently, when I do stuff for commercial purposes, not like radio or TV commercials, but industrial type work, I'll frequently be asked to sign non-disclosure agreements.
Right.
And sometimes there's language in the non-disclosure agreement that if they take it word for word, it could prevent you from doing all kinds of work.
Yeah.
And, I've had to go back and say, I can't do this. We need to revise the language here,
exactly.
Because if you're going to hold me to the letter of this thing, that means I'm precluded for doing any more of these types of things. And it could be as simple as a podcast intro.
Yeah. It could be anything. I mean, that's why, and it's also key to get those contracts reviewed if you don't understand them. If you understand them yourself, fine.
Yeah.
And also be upfront, because sometimes they'll ask you, have you done any whatever, pharmaceutical in the past X years?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that doesn't prevent you from doing another job. They just want to know. But that's the key, is like to make sure that it's all spelled out up front. Yes, I did. I did, because you heard me on the last one. That's why you hired me on this one.
Right.
So, you know what I mean? So just put it right in the contract that you're allowed to have done those other ones. Sometimes it may be an issue, but what can you do? And that's why you got to make sure that what you did prior paid you well enough, so that when you have to give up the future job, that at least you made decent money on the last
Right.
job, because those are issues that they come up all the time. They just, they overlap. So it just has to be considered. It's part of what I was talking about before about, the willy-nilly, off the seat of the pants kind of stuff without having a plan or without thinking about what you're doing.
It's really good advice. And it's something that you wouldn't think about. If you're just getting started in the business and you're excited to make that first check, that's something that you should know going in.
Yeah, well, I mean, if it's your first gig,
Yeah.
that's probably the time to take the risk on it. But, with some people's luck, their first gig will be a $25 car commercial, and then their very next one, the next day, will be like a national spot. And they can't do it because they just did the $25
Wow.
one. So that's why it's something you have to always on the front of your mind. Is it worth when I do this $50 job? Am I going to get the big one tomorrow? So just limit it. That's what you need to do. Just limit. They can only use it for, a year or whatever. 6 months, and you can do other things. They're not precluding you from doing other. Just put some restrictive language in it, and then just cover yourself. Basically, that's all.
There you go. That's great advice. Rob, if people want to contact you, what's the best way to do that? And give your information again on how they can get a hold of your book.
Sure. Yeah. The book is called VoiceOver Legal, and they can go to voiceoverlegal.com. My website is robpaglia, PAGLIA.com. Phone number, if they want to call me, is 203-663-2803.
Excellent. Was there anything else that you wanted to share with us today?
Another issue that voice talent should be aware of now is collections. They should be very careful when they're doing jobs without getting any money up front, because that has been an epidemic that I've seen of voiceover artists just blatantly not getting paid. And people saying, well, I'm not paying you, I don't care.
Wow.
Sue me. I've had a rash of those. So
really?
And I've had to really pull out all the tactics. And there are legal tactics you can do to help leverage to get your money, but we don't want to go there. Just get your money up front.
That stinks.
Yeah, and it's not clients that normally you do business with on a well, even then, clients you're doing business with all the time. Sometimes they're clients that are not talents are not getting paid from those clients. So it doesn't really matter if you've done work for a client forever or if it's a new client. I've seen both sides. So clients will do work, talents will do work for 6 months, and then they'll say, "Hey, I haven't gotten paid," and then they can't.
Yeah, I have a little professional services agreement that I send to people. I said, here's how I work. If you want to work with me, here's what you got to do, and here's how we're going to handle retakes and copy revisions and all that kind of stuff. It's just something I put together myself. I set the rules, and it's worked very well for me.
Yep, and just make sure that you stay on top of the collections. Don't let it get too far out. And for new clients, I recommend getting money up front, at least half front. There's the other thing is that some of these clients that are hiring you don't understand the business. So if they don't like what you did, they don't want to pay you. So
right.
That should never be the case. You should always get paid for work, even if the client decides they don't like it and they want to hire someone else.
Yep, I've had that happen too. Somebody may be hearing about getting the deposit up front or, getting the money up front. People might be uncomfortable with that. How? Because that's not... If you go to work, you work for a week or a couple of weeks, and then you get a paycheck. So right. People are used to working and then getting paid.
That's an employee.
Yeah.
The Department of Labor protects them if they don't.
Okay. So what you're saying is now that you're the sole person in charge of collecting and performing and all that kind of stuff, you got to take steps to protect yourself. How do you help people kind of get past any kind of discomfort of asking for the money up front? What do you say?
It's really simple. It's a business. So if somebody's hiring you, they have to have the expectation that they're going to pay you.
Right.
And if they balk, that's a red flag to run, because it's a sign that they're trying to steal your work. And it's really easy to steal a voiceover file because it's just a stupid file over the internet.
Right.
There's nothing, you can't repossess it. So
right. Even if you watermark it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's not a car or a house. You can put a lien on. So, what you can do, though, is copyright the file. And that's one of the things, that's one of my collection techniques. Because if you copyright the file, anyone who uses it is subject to infringement penalties. So that means the end user, too. So if you send letters out saying cease and desist, or I'm going to fine, that you're going to get fined $500 to $55,000 in penalties under the U.S. Copyright Act. That usually gets action. But it's still something that shouldn't have to happen.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a real buzzkill.
Yeah, and you're definitely killing the. Well, you may want to kill that relationship anyway, but you're definitely going to kill the relationship by doing that. You're not going to get future work.
Right. Let's sign up for that again.
I know, exactly. No, but just ask. I mean, it's really simple. There's no reason to be uncomfortable asking for someone to pay for your services. I mean, and it's routine. 50% up front, 50% on the back end. Just make it a routine as part of your business. And eventually, you're going to get enough business where it's not going to be a big deal. It's going to be, some people may say no, they don't want to do it, but you'll have other clients that are doing it and are fine with it. You're going to get quality clients, and that's what you want. You don't just want any clients.
Right. I found that, I've set up, I like to call them the rules of engagement. And whenever somebody asks, you learn by doing, right? So every once in a while, you'll get somebody to say, hey, I'd like to, instead of give you 50% up front, can I give you a third and then a third and a third? Or anytime I've made an accommodation for someone outside of those things, something goes wrong with it. Because anytime someone wants to change up how you do business, inevitably something goes with the project. Or like, you know what? I've decided I'm not going to. This is what always happens. I've decided I don't want to do this. So can I have my money back?
Right.
And you've already spent time setting up the project. You've sent emails, all that stuff. That's your time. That's worth something.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, I'll give you some of it back, but here's why I want to keep some of it. And then you get into that whole thing. And it's like, after you get 2 or 3 of those things under your belt, you say, no, this is how I do it.
Yeah, exactly. Because, and when they start negotiating like that should be a red flag that's what they're thinking, that they're just trying to shop around. They're doing auditions, basically.
Right.
They're going to hire 10 people and not pay them up front, and they're going to pick the one they like the best, and that's the one that they're going to pay, or not, maybe not even pay, but that's what they're thinking. They're just doing auditions by hiring you, And so if you could avoid that whole game by just saying, okay, half up front, half in the or whatever it is, even if it's a third, whatever your normal. I mean, just get money up front, whatever's going to compensate for your time. Doing the recording it and sending it off, whatever it is. That's your price. But you got to get something up front because if they don't have any skin in the game, that's a bad position for you to be in, trying to collect money, especially if they're across the world or across the country.
Oh, it's literally, you can do stuff around the world now. Here's a situation I've run into, and this is right along the lines of what you're talking about, but you do the work, you send it off to the client for approval, and then you don't hear from them for months.
Yep.
And it's like, hello?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that happens too. Yeah. At that point, that's why your contract needs to say that once you deliver the files, they owe the rest of the money. Unless you want to give an opportunity for them to back out of the deal. If you're going to guarantee your work, give a guarantee that they're going to like it, then you could say that they don't owe the other half. But I mean, I wouldn't do that. I would just, if they don't like it, that's not my issue. It's theirs. Mm-hmm. If I got the script correct and and I did everything I was supposed to do on my end, then I expect them to pay me. If I did something wrong, fine. But if I did everything they asked of me, then I expect to get paid.
Right.
So.
Anything else?
No, I think that's it.
Well, Rob, this has been a lot of fun. I want to thank you again for taking time out of your schedule.
Thank you very much. It's good talking to you.
Wait just a second there, sir. You mentioned something at the beginning of the show about a promo code so we could get this book?
Oh, yeah.
I think it would be appropriate at this time to say something like, but wait, there's more.
Okay. Hey, it's John again. So at the beginning of the program, I told you I had a special affiliate code where you could save $5 off the cost of Rob's book. It's an affiliate link. Just go to voiceoverlegal.com. That's www.voiceoverlegal.com. Order the book, and then when you're checking out, there will be an opportunity for you to enter a promo code, a promotion code, where you'll save $5. And the promo code that you need to enter is V as in voice, M as in marketing, and P as in podcast. VMP. Enter VMP in the promo code box at checkout, and you'll save $5 right off the top. So pick up that book. There's a lot of great topics in there. We just scratched the surface during the interview. There may or may not be an episode next week. Like I said, I'm on vacation. I'll have to see how the spirit moves me. If I don't talk to you next week, it'll definitely be the week after. I hope you're having a great summer. Thank you very much for listening, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.
Our program originates in the Boston studios. We hope you'll join us again. Until then, we bid you au revoir, keep your chin up, and the best of luck.
Well, that's it for this episode of the VoiceOver Marketing Podcast. If you like this podcast, please subscribe to it at voiceovermarketingpodcast.com so you'll get notices of new episodes, and please share it with your friends and colleagues in the voiceover world. Also, it would be a huge help if you'd like this podcast and rate it on iTunes to help keep it near the top of the list. Feel free to share your comments and questions about this episode and future topics you'd like discussed at voiceovermarketingpodcast.com. And if you'd like more information on one-on-one coaching with me and mastermind group opportunities where we focus on growing your business, feel free to drop me a line at my cyber assistant's email address at mike@johnmelly.com. Thanks for listening. Now go out there and share your voice with the world.